What's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the Vendetta Sports Media Daily Show. It is July 25th, 2023. I'm Jerry Walker. Alongside me today, that way, is Matt Hanifan. And Matt, before we talk about all the exciting news that's happened in the last 24, 48 hours, how are you doing?
Doing all right, man. I'm doing all right. Again, I talked about McDonald's about this last week. It's very hot in my area right now, so it's like triple digits, dry heat. So that's not necessarily great, but no,
Are
man,
you,
I'm doing all right, man. How about you?
are you in Nevada? Is that right?
Yeah.
Or yeah, so God, I can imagine the heat there. It's similar to what it was like. I went to school in Arizona, so I get your talk of triple digits, just dry heat. It's just
Oh, Arizona's awful. I went there. I have family that lives close to Tucson,
oh
and
God,
so I went there years and years ago for like a week during summer, and it's more miserable than here. A
really?
lot more miserable because that's like 110, 115. But no, it's like 100 right now. Or not like right now as we're
Well,
talking,
it
but like
has been.
it has been lately. Yeah, so that's
Yeah,
not great. But
yeah. I mean, Nashville is just hot and humid, but I was out getting some snow skiing this week, so feeling good about that. Going to avoid the heat for a bit, but
in July,
yeah. So I flew. I went down to Chile. I have some friends who live in
oh,
Chile, so I went down there to ski, but
okay,
super cool and just needed a break from the heat if I could get one.
yeah,
So worked out, but let's hop into some sports news. And I think the big thing that happened today, this morning, Jalen.
several big things, but
Yeah, we'll start with this one at a time. There actually is a lot. Jalen Brown is now the highest paid NBA player in history. He got a 5 year, $304 million supermax from the Boston Celtics. Do you think he's deserving of that? I'll start with that because I would think there's other players that might be deserving of more.
well, I mean, when it comes to the supermax, that's usually how it goes. It's
Yeah.
usually every single season, whether whoever is really eligible for that extension typically gets that extension, regardless if they're quote unquote deserving of it. Like, I don't know if Jalen Brown is 100% deserving of the supermax, but this goes back to my theory of teams value their own players more than other people do. Um, like the Celtics value Jalen Brown and what he brings as kind of a two-way wing. Um, he was a second team All NBA player this last season,
Yeah.
and they value him more than, I don't know, they would value him more than like the Clippers would,
Yeah.
or some other team, Team X. And he's been a linchpin to their core ever since he got drafted, I believe, in what, 2016, 2017.
Yeah.
He was number three overall pick. Like it does send like a shockwave through people, and I think that's why they're getting some criticism for it, because it's the first 9-figure deal that has a 3 in front of it. And so when you see more and more of these extensions being handed out in the coming seasons, like Jason Tatum's eligible for
Next year, I think.
a supermax that could be 335-ish million next season.
Yeah.
And it's not like the supermax is just because they're a supermax. Like, it doesn't mean it's going to look like completely better, but like, especially when this new TV deal kicks in like 2025, 26, whenever that's supposed to be, when the cap goes up 10% each year, well, you're going to start seeing these extensions get higher and higher and higher. It's just how the math works. And so it's like, when you look at the 304 million 5 years from now, it's not going to look as bad.
No,
But it is, I mean, like, I'm trying to look at it from like a both sides perspective, because it's like, yeah, I don't think like when you think about Jalen Brown as a basketball player, I don't think when you just say 300 million out loud, I don't know if he's necessarily worth that. But then, like, what's the alternative to it? You lose an All NBA player, a pretty perennial All NBA player for nothing, especially when this Boston Celtics team is in title contention right now. Like, that's a deal that you have to make right now, whether you want to make it or not. Like, is something you have, like, because if you trade Jalen Brown, then you're probably going to get 75 cents on the dollar, and you're going to get a collection of players who combined probably aren't as good as Jalen Brown is right now, or will be in the next year or so when that extension kicks in. And so you're having to think about all these different alternatives, and it's like the Boston Celtics are one of the best teams in the NBA right now. So you pay him that money, even though he's only going to be making $31 million this year. You paid him that money right now, hoping that you're able to win a title or two throughout the duration of the contract, as long as he and Jason Tatum are still with the team. That's your end goal.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because I mean, like you said, Jason Tatum's going to get the super max next year, and
whether people want to give it to him or not, he's going to get. Whether the Celtics are fully like going to stomach that, because they're going to be making over $630 million in just super max extensions for the next several years. It's like, even if they want to fully stomach that, they're going to have to give it to him, because the alternative is, guess what? You're probably not going to re-sign him. I mean, Tatum still has the player option that he's going to opt out of, and that contract would be in place of that player option for 25, 26. But nevertheless, they're going to give it to him. That's just how it. That's just how.
I mean, realistically, if the Celtics don't pay him, I'm sure there's a list of other teams that are willing to pay whatever the price is to get Jason Tatum on their team, and probably would have been the same with Jaylen Brown. So it's going to be something they need to do, because, I mean, I look at it like the Nuggets did. They gave pretty much three super maxes in 3 years to Jokic, Jamal Murray, and Michael Porter Jr. And it's because the window, you only have so much time with these players. The window is so small, even more in the NBA, with how teams are getting better each year, how players are moving around so much, that a team like the Celtics, they needed to do this to keep these guys around, keep their core together to make a run further. Because, I mean, they were what, a couple wins away from winning the NBA title 2 seasons ago. Their window is perfect right now. They need to keep these guys, and it does make sense from that aspect.
Even though he is, again, technically the richest player in NBA history, or whatever way you want to phrase it, because it's like you could kind of make not a similarity, but like how quarterbacks get paid in the NFL. It's like they just topple each other. About like, okay, this guy's now the richest player, and then this guy's the rich. Like, they just keep getting paid on top of each other. They set a new market for themselves, or for like the rest of the position. And the NBA, it's different, because it's obviously like, okay, Jason Tatum's now eligible for this super max extension that's worth 35% of the cap, that no one else, or very few, are even eligible for throughout their career, because of the qualifications that you need for it. But like, the more and more, like, there's going to be players down the line who, after their rookie contracts are over, are going to be or at least towards the end of their rookie contracts, because you need 7 years of service time to be eligible for it. Then guess what? They're going to be making supermax extensions, probably, because the league is just that good. But like, as I mentioned earlier, I want to look at it from both sides. Well, then from Boston's perspective, okay, now they're going to be a second apron team for, I don't know how long, for probably throughout the duration of this contract, you would expect, right? And so now you have all these team building restrictions, and it's like, okay, you were able to trade for Kristaps Porzingis, and they gave him that 2-year extension for $60 million or whatever it was. It's like, okay, great, cool. But now you're limited to like your flexibility, and so it's like, you can't give out mid-level exceptions. You can't sign buyout players. You can't aggregate salaries in trades. You can't send out cash in trades. Like, your first round pick's going to be frozen no matter what, whether you're bad or good. The Celtics are probably going to be good, but your first round pick's going to be frozen 7 years down the line. You can't trade that pick. So it's like, there's all these different like team building restrictions now that you're over the second apron. But and so if you look at it from that aspect, it's like, okay, do I really want to pay Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, I don't know, 80 million, 90 million, whatever the combined million is over the duration of that contract, along with Kristaps Porzingis, at least in the final year of that 2-year extension, along with like other pieces to be a second apron team. And so it's like, I get it from that aspect, but that's shit that you worry about down the line. Like, we've seen it before where there has been the cryptic quotes about Jaylen Brown not being happy in Boston. I don't know how much truth to those rumors are or not. I don't know if he genuinely doesn't like Boston or not. I'm not him. I'm not in his mind. I can't read his mind. But we've seen players get these deals before, and then a year later ask out, or like a year and a half later, 2 years later ask out. That's just how this league works. And so maybe Boston doesn't have to. I mean, obviously, best case scenario is you keep these two guys together and continually build around him. But like, this league moves incredibly fast. Shit changes like that. Oh, yeah. There's always a superstar or someone that's unhappy every 6 months or whatever. Like that's just how this league works. And so who knows if these two guys will be together throughout the duration of this contract, but that's like the doomsday scenario. Not saying that will happen or will not happen. I don't know. Because again, anything can happen in this league. That's just how this league is, and that's how this league works, for better or worse. But so from that perspective, who knows? But I'm happy for Jaylen Brown that he got his money.
Got his bag.
I think I'm a little bit higher on Jaylen Brown than the consensus, but albeit even with the dribbling concerns that he's had against Miami, specifically these last two playoffs. But I think. I mean, congratulations to him. I mean, he got the bag, and I don't want to say I don't like speaking on if someone deserves it or not, but he's not going to be. He's not, because there's been plenty of other players that have gotten Supermax extensions who probably didn't deserve it. But that's just how the Supermax works. If you're eligible for it, a team's going to pay you. And he's an all NBA player. He made all NBA second team. So, I mean, credit to him for being one of the 10 best players this last year. He's a top probably 20, 25 player in the league right now. Maybe a top 15 player. I don't know. I'd have to do a list, but I'm happy for him that he got his bag. But I'm just trying to look at this from like both sides.
Both sides, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's definitely questions around everything about what happens next, and I was curious, or just thinking to myself, like, what happened? What would have happened in the rest of free agency if this happened towards the beginning? What other crazy contracts would we be seeing? Because you'd be like, okay, Jaylen Brown's set at this price, and this is what you're talking about in the NFL: is quarterback gets listed at this price, signs that contract, and now everyone else is like, oh, I'm just as good. I deserve just as much.
Right.
I'm just as important. So I'm wondering how that would have really affected the rest of the NBA free agency. But as it is, it's kind of halfway through. So most of the big names have already signed, but there's still some stuff that could go around, and interested to see what happens next before the season starts, because there's still players to move. I'm convinced one way or another. I think Damian Lillard will probably be moving. I just don't know where exactly. I know you're hoping he goes to Miami.
Well, I mean, they're the only team that's bidding for him. That's the thing. It's like, it's a lot of posturing, and it's like Miami's not willing to bid against themselves, but no other team is coming and no other team is coming knocking the door down for Damian Lillard, because there have been reports from Dame's agent himself about him not willing to play there if he got traded there. And so it's like, why would a team fork over a ton of their assets if they're not willing, if Dame's not willing to play that, reportedly?
Absolutely.
It's coming from Dame's agent, so I think there's some truth to it. I mean, I don't know if you'd completely sit out, but who knows? But like, Miami's not willing to bid against themselves. Portland's looking for better offers, even though it wouldn't be a 2-team trade anyways, because Portland doesn't want Tyler Hero. And so Miami would also try to have to find a third team, whether it's Brooklyn, San Antonio, whomever, to get draft compensation that they could then send to Portland. Like, Portland, no matter what, is probably getting more assets than Miami can offer. So I don't know what the fuck the hold off is, but I guess that's coming from a little bit of a biased perspective, but like, the same, like, at this point, it's just getting annoying. And then the James Harden trade rumors, which along the same lines, the Clippers don't want to give up. I don't know. They don't want to give up Terrence Mann. They don't want to give up some of their more valuable assets. Yeah. That's not named Paul George or Kawhi Leonard for James Harden, and understandably so. But Daryl Morey's definitely one GM that can that will wait it out, because he did it with Ben Simmons. He'd probably do it again with James Harden the second time, even though James Harden has just 1 year left on his deal.
Yeah, I mean, who knows what's going to happen with James Harden? It's another guy that just could go anywhere to an extent. But I'm going to move us on from the NBA a bit. We were talking about a record-setting contract in the NBA. Man, there's almost a record-setting contract in sports, period. Kylian Mbappe got offered something like $1.1 billion to go play for the Saudi Arabian club Al Hilal yesterday. It sounds like he's probably not going to end up going there. I think he wants to still play in Europe, play in the Champions League, compete with all these. But how do you turn down $1.1 billion for one season? It's a 1-year
Well,
contract.
to my understanding, you know about this more than I would, so I beg your pardon for all the viewers out there who are watching this. But he would be signing this deal with the guarantee that he's going to Real Madrid next year, right?
Absolutely. It'd be a 1-year deal.
So,
he plays and then can go up wherever he wants for free.
And I know I saw something over the weekend that I don't know if it was like a tournament, but like PSG went to like Japan for like, and he wasn't on the team, right?
Yeah, they're doing some preseason friendlies in Japan, and
yeah,
they left him off, so he's training with the reserves back in Paris.
Right.
And I mean, his thing, from what I've read and seen, he's going to stand out. He's going to have a standoff with PSG, which he already is. He said he might refuse to play for him this season and just sit on the bench and make money and then leave for free. So they're adamant that either he signs an extension with the French club or he transfers this summer. And they have their price set in stone of what they want. And they're not going to hear any less. Because, I mean, he's been to 2 World Cup finals. He's won one, had a hat trick in the other, and he's 24 years old. He has the best of his career ahead of him still, and that's saying something compared to what he's done already.
And if you're him, or if you're PSG, considering it's what, the $330 million transfer fee.
Yeah.
PSG would get that money, right? Like if he went to Al Hilal would pay PSG that money. So like in theory, wouldn't you want him to accept that contract if you're PSG, just because you get the 300 million in return, or 330, whatever the number it is?
That's kind of what's happened already. Is PSG have accepted the contract offer from Al Hilal, but Mbappe himself now has to accept it as well, and I don't think he's going to. I mean, I don't know where else he would go. I think at the end of the day, it's really for him Real Madrid or bust. And I don't know if Madrid has the money at the moment to go out and buy him. So it's kind of that weird position where, because obviously his contract runs out after this season. So that would mean he could transfer anywhere he wants and no one would have to pay that ridiculous transfer fee. So that's kind of what he's waiting for, is to go to Real Madrid next year for sure. But I just don't see him going to Saudi Arabia. We've seen some other guys go there and some younger guys, but for the most part, it's been older players that are kind of towards the past their prime. And Mbappe, like I said, is still ahead of his prime, still finding his way into it, which is crazy to think about. So I think he'll be somewhere in Europe still. I think he probably stays at PSG. He just might not play as much as we'd seen, but I don't think that'll affect his contract next year at all.
Yeah, well, it's like I think there's like a legacy part of it, because it's like you want to stay in Europe and have the possibility of. I think PSG, they can compete for the Champions League, right?
Yeah, and that's the big issue that PSG's had in the past, is they've never won the Champions League as much money as they've had in recent times. Went out and got Neymar, Messi alongside Mbappe and tried to make kind of a super team, and it just didn't work out. So now they're kind of transferring their idea to, we don't need a bunch of individual superstars. We need to start working from the ground up, kind of like what other teams have done, where they grow the players there and kind of build a system around them, not just have big names kind of thrown together. To an extent, it's similar to what we've seen in the NBA in the past, where teams have gone out and just thrown big name players together, hoping it works, and hasn't necessarily worked out for them. So it's going to be interesting to see. I don't really trust PSG to win the Champions League anytime soon. There's just something about them. Every time they make a run, they find a way to mess it up, get in their own way. So I wouldn't be surprised if he hangs around for one more year there. I know where he won't go. He won't be coming to the MLS, that's for sure.
Dang it.
He won't be joining Messi in Miami. God, if he came to the MLS, that would change everything even more than the Messi.
I mean, yeah, it's the biggest pipe dream imaginable. But like, yeah, I know I'm kind of with you on like your first point. Like when I first saw 776 million or whatever it was, I like nearly fell out of my chair, because it's like, wait, 1 year 776 million plus the 300 million that the Al Hilal is going to pay PSG. So yeah, it's the 1.1 billion, and that's just like, if I were him, I would take the bag, but I'm not him.
Yeah,
because it's like, even though he is 24 and still has, and it's like as I mentioned, like maybe it's like he's thinking about more of the legacy than it is like, dude, you get 776 million. And you're still 26 by the time you transfer, 25, however old he is. Yeah. Like,
You've set yourself up for life, and you still
right. But again, I'm not him, so I'm speaking from.
Oh yeah, you're speaking how most people are thinking about it. Like
yeah, like that's just an insane. But it's also like if I'm thinking about it from Al Hilal's perspective, because it's like I know Saudi Arabia, the Saudi Arabian League has tried to build their league. Again, you know about this more than I would about just bringing in these like Ronaldo, Benzema. I think Conte, like there's players that they're bringing in to try to, I guess, build up the stature, for lack of a better phrase. But I wonder just like what the negotiation is like. Who are you negotiating against for 700 plus million? Like that's my question. But like I'm sure there's going to be other teams who are offering Mbappe plenty of money, whether it's above the 1.1 billion combined or not. I'm sure they're not the only team that's doing it, but obviously they have the funds to do it. I don't know how, but they have the funds to do it. But like, I just wonder who you were negotiating against to come up with that. But you're also trying to do the best you can to lure him over and build up your league for at least 1 year. So maybe that's the negotiation.
I think that is part of it. It's just they want him to come there because that puts a young, world-known face in their league and it'll bring more eyes to it. Similar to like how MLS brought over Messi. I know he's far older, but same thing. You bring Messi over, you bring eyes over. You bring viewers, bring new fans in. And that's kind of what Saudi Arabia has been trying to do this summer, especially, is just grow their league internationally and make people want to watch it, want to go and see games, want to do all that. So it's going to be interesting to see, but this has brought up one question for me that if you can answer it, go ahead. If not, it is. But this is Mbappe at 24. Imagine if Messi and Ronaldo were in this era of like money spending when they were 24. I think they'd have to be worth like damn near $2 billion.
I don't know. I can't remember if it was Barcelona or PS. But someone offered Messi like what 250. Or not Messi himself, but like they offered the club like 250, 300 million for a transfer fee, like in like 2017, if I can remember correctly.
Yeah, so he signed a ridiculous.
I can't remember which one.
So it was like a $674 million contract he had at Barcelona in 2017, which at the time it still is probably the largest contract in soccer. But Al Hilal also offered him 1.6 billion for 3 years this past June. So they have so much money to throw around that I wouldn't be surprised if they start growing it. We see it in every other sport as well. But.
Yeah, inflation's real. So yeah, I don't. Yeah, if them at 24, I mean, yeah, who the heck knows? How old is Messi right now? Is he?
Messi's 35, I want to say.
35. Okay. For some reason, I was thinking like he's 37, 38. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, he still doesn't have a ton left. He's coming here to hang out in Miami and just have fun.
Well, yeah, it's also like going back to your point about like, yeah, the MLS bringing in new faces. Like, I think, at least to my memory, I could be completely wrong with this, but like the first example that I can remember of like a star player coming over to the MLS, at least in recent memory, was Ibrahimovic.
Yeah.
When he came over, I think it was the Galaxy.
Yep. Yeah, it all really started back in like 07 or 08, around then when David Beckham left.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, David Beckham. Yeah, because he was also a Galaxy. Yeah.
Yeah, he also went to the Galaxy, and now he's part of the Miami ownership group, which I think he knows how Messi was feeling and all that, and I think they're pretty close with each other. But there's been a few big players, but Zlatan was the one that in recent times was the really big name, and because he was still in his prime. He walked into the MLS, scored 2 goals in his first game, scored a ton of goals, and then just walked out after a year and a half, 2 years, back to Europe where he competed in the Champions League and did a whole load of other things before his retirement. So it's crazy stuff. But I'm going to move on from this topic of soccer to kind of some little scarier news. Would Bronny James today suffered a cardiac arrest while working out at USC. I don't know if it sounds like he's stable now from the reports I've read, but that still has to be a scary thing for a guy going into his freshman year.
Yeah. I mean, it's scary for anyone.
Yeah.
It's like I'm just on like the sadder side. Like I'm thankful that he's okay. I think the report suggested that he's out of the ICU.
Yeah.
And it just also speaks to like the fragility of life. And it's like, you never know when something like this can happen. And so again, thankful that he's okay. I'm hoping for speedy, not just physical recovery, but mental recovery. Cause there's a lot of like shit that can get messed up mentally if someone undergoes something like that. So I don't know what this necessarily means for his basketball career. I don't want to speak on like all that and everything else, cause no one really knows right now, but thankful that he is okay. Thankful that, I mean, obviously, still prayers go out to LeBron and his family, and obviously Bronny himself as well, because it's a scary situation for everyone involved, especially Bronny.
Oh, definitely.
Again, who knows what this means for the rest of his basketball career? But thankful, very thankful that, I mean, he's still alive and he's still okay. Because cardiac arrests are scary, man.
Yes,
I mean, no shit. No one has that goes without saying, but it's still, especially when you're a young athlete, it's an incredibly scary situation. So,
I mean, as much as it is terrible to happen, I think the fact that it happened at USC might be a benefit to him, because from doing some research earlier, they had a guy last year, an incoming freshman, Vincent Iwukuku, who suffered a cardiac arrest in July leading into his freshman year as well at USC. He ended up only playing 14 games, came back in January. So it's not a good thing that they have the experience, because it's terrible things that happen.
yeah.
But it is definitely helpful that maybe they have had something in the past that it helps them treat it a little better, and they have a little more understanding as much as you can of something like this. That's just a freak thing that can really happen to anyone at any time. So,
Yeah, perhaps.
but it's definitely some crazy stuff. And I mean, we saw it in the NFL last year with DeMar Hamlin, who suffered a cardiac arrest. And it's just playing sports, it puts it into perspective that sports aren't all that matters. There's so much more going on in life. And it's just at the end of the day, they're playing a game, and you don't want to risk anyone's health and life over dribbling the ball up and down the court and shooting the ball in. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So we'll move on to a little bit more of a upbeat note. That's definitely needed to be covered, but definitely a little sad. Saquon Barkley. There's been all this issues with the running backs getting money and all their contract stuff in recent times. They had a Zoom meeting on Sunday with a few running backs, but he's been franchise tagged by the Giants, and I want to say it's like an $11 million contract for 1 year. I think that's pretty decent money for him. Running backs have just been underpaid so much, it seems, that it's kind of surprising that immediately after this, we see Saquon sign. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a few more running backs get extended or new contracts coming up soon. So,
well, the thing that's interesting about this is the franchise tag that he was playing under, or that he was going to play under if he signed the extension, was about $10.1 million.
Yeah.
So he's only signing for $900K more, but that's not including the incentives. Like his base salary for this season, I was looking at before I logged on, it was about 8.1 million, something like that. And so then he has the $2 million in incentives, or $2 million in signing bonus, plus there's three different incentives that he has. One, I think, is the likely incentive, and then the two others are like benchmarks that he needs to reach, but to get that full 11 million. But like, there's also no tag clause in there towards like he can't get tagged at the end of his deal. Like, he can still get tagged for 12 to 13 million. I think it's 120%, depending on what the final number is, I believe. And so he can still get tagged for next year, but ultimately, I think this is just great news for the Giants, because it's like you get your star running back in the building for training camp, and there's no holdouts or whatever. And so at least that's good news for them. But like, I found it to be interesting, because it's like usually when these contracts happen, especially if you're holding out, you would expect them to be like a multi-year deal for 2 years, 3 years, whatever the case is. And it's like, you're right, running backs aren't getting as much money nowadays. And it's like, I've always been on I don't want to pay running backs. I've always been on that side, but I guess I get it from their own perspective because it's like they want to get paid as much money as they think they're worth. And it's just the unfortunate case that NFL teams and NFL fans don't believe they're worth as much as they used to be because of how the NFL has changed schematically. It's like that's just kind of speaking from perspective there. But this is just good news for Giants fans that he's now getting this $11 million deal. Who knows if they'll be able to work out something for a long-term deal in the future, at least next offseason, whenever they're able to do that. But Saquon's officially a Giant. So all the Giants fans out there watching this, hearing about this, just exhale.
Yeah, it's done. There's no stalemate. Saquon is not leaving at the moment, at least. Got him for another year unless they do end up trading him. But I don't see it. I didn't expect McCaffrey to get traded last year, so you never really know with running backs. But
if they're bad, I don't think they're going to be that bad.
No, I don't think they will be either. The whole NFC East is a little funky because obviously the Eagles on paper look like the best team still. Then it's kind of just a toss-up depending on the week of Cowboys, even Commanders to a lesser extent, but still they have some good talent that they can win games. And then the Giants, it's that kind of a little clusterfuck in that behind the Eagles to an extent, if I say it that way.
Well, I mean, yeah, they were like surprisingly better than like the division itself was better than I think people expected it to be last year. Because remember, all the jokes for years were like the NFC least.
Yep.
And I mean, obviously the Eagles were the cream of the crop last year in the NFC. But the division was just better overall. I don't know how that's going to be this year. I'm expecting maybe, I don't know if how much the Giants will regress, if they'll regress at all. I know they were involved in a lot of one-score close games last year. Yeah. And with like Washington, their quarterback situation is a disaster. And then, I mean, Dallas, they got Brandon Cooks, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, Tony Pollard's now officially being like the starting running back. Kellen Moore's not there anymore, so who knows how that'll impact them. But I don't know if they'll probably be around 9, 10, 11 wins as well.
Looking at the standings from last year, that's the only division that all 4 teams were 500 or better.
Exactly. Yep.
And that only was because the Giants and Commanders had a tie. So even then, it's still just crazy to think that we see that on one hand of all 4 teams are 500. Then we see the NFC South where not a single team had a winning record. It's NFL is an interesting league to say the least when it comes to team divisions. Just I don't really know what to expect this year. There's a lot of teams that I think will do well, but knowing that they'll probably end up struggling or have injuries that derail it. And I guess that's the thing with the running backs is they're so injury prone as a position that you don't want to pay a running back super crazy money for him just to go and get hurt and miss out on the better part of a whole season or 2 seasons or to an extent, whatever that ends up being.
A lot of wear and tear.
Yeah, a lot of wear and tear. Running into the big defensive linemen, trying to get through the holes. You just step weirdly one way and your season's done. We've seen that happen with plenty of players in the past. So I understand the league itself not paying him, but good for Saquon at least getting a little more than that franchise tag, even if it isn't a ton more. Still kind of trending in the right direction there.
Agreed.
Do you want to move on to, because we talked some NFL, we did some NBA, some soccer. Now it's time for some baseball because the trade deadline is a week away. I think the big talk there is obviously Shohei Ohtani, if he ends up moving or not. Start with that. Do you think he does?
No.
Or do you think he'll still be an Angel?
I think he'll still be an Angel.
No.
And part of that is I don't know if another team is willing to fork over a huge prospect haul for possibly just 2.5 months or 2 months for Shohei Ohtani. I don't see that coming into fruition. If I'm being completely honest, maybe I'm wrong. But
I'm with you. I think because there's that risk that, you go out, trade for Ohtani, you give up your entire farm system for him for 2-3 months. You end up, say, not winning the World Series, and then he leaves in free agency. You've then just given up your entire season this year and your entire future for 3 months of a guy that didn't work out. So I think
there's definitely teams that I'm looking out for that I don't want to say could trade for him, but it would be fun if they traded to him. Like one team just off the rip that would be like him getting traded to, that would be fun, would be like the Orioles.
Yeah.
Like the Orioles would be fun. I mean, obviously, yeah, I'm a Yankee fan. You can see the thing behind me. I don't want the Orioles to Shohei Ohtani, but objectively, it'd be fun as hell.
Oh, it would be.
If they got him to solidify that rotation or at least make it a little bit better, plus just add to that lineup that has been mashing the hell out of the ball. Like that would be a fun team, like another fun team. I'm just throwing it out there, like maybe Houston, or maybe Texas, maybe. I mean, obviously the Dodgers are the one that's like the top. Like, obviously he's been linked to the Dodgers more than any other team because of like the West Coast thing, but I'm still of the belief that I don't even know if Shohei knows what he wants to do in free agency, let alone what other people think Shohei wants to do in free agency. Maybe he does go to the Dodgers. Maybe he doesn't. But
I would hate it if he went to the Dodgers.
Everyone would.
It just wouldn't be fun.
Or I'm not saying everyone. I wouldn't really care that much, but I'm sure a decent amount of people
would be upset. But I love the Orioles shout. That's the one that I think
Orioles would be fun as hell. Like
they have all the prospects to trade away. Like they're super stacked in their minor league system that they have the guys. They have a ton of young guys already on their MLB team. So you lose some of those younger guys in the minors. Bring in Ohtani, it would just be so much fun to watch because they're on an absolute tear at the moment also.
And it's also, I think the one thing that I think the Angels need if they were to trade Ohtani would be a haul of pitching prospects.
Yeah.
And like if I could remember correctly, I think the Orioles system is stacked, but it's a lot of position players.
Yeah, it is.
So I guess that's like the one negative of trading with the Orioles, but you would still get a good prospect haul in return anyways, if you're the Angels. But like one that I've briefly seen that would also be fun. I don't know how many pitching prospects they have in their system, but like I've seen the Reds as a team. The Reds out there is like an Ohtani team. I'm not saying there's like reputable rumors. I'm just saying teams have like just people have thrown it out there like, oh, what if like that would be fun.
You have Ohtani, who's probably the most talented guy in baseball. Ellie De La Cruz, who's probably the most in baseball. Then you got Joey Votto, who's still having last I saw he was having a resurging year towards the end of his career. So that would be fun to see. I wouldn't mind that.
Matt McClain.
Yeah, Ohio doesn't have a
Christian Encarnacion Strand. Like I'm guessing you would probably have to ask, like if you're the Angels, you'd probably ask for Ellie De La Cruz. Like
I think you'd have to.
Or like you would have to ask for McClain or like one of these young guys that's already been up. But I mean, obviously there's been recent rumors about Jonathan. They've been shopping Jonathan India. I'm sure he would probably be included in like a trade of that sort. But like just a fun thought. A fun thought.
The only other one that I wanted to throw out there, not because it'd necessarily be fun to see, but a team to sign him in free agency. Because I'm pretty sure they have a ton of cap space. They've always played small money style.
There's no cap, so
not cap. What is it? Luxury tax.
Yeah.
But give me the Oakland A's when they move to Vegas.
Oh
go
my
out
God.
and sign Ohtani.
We're gonna get canceled. No.
Did that happen? Oh, God. I don't think that would ever happen. But
no, it would.
But that would be that's the one in my mind, like. Just for the pure chaos of everything, let's see Ohtani go to Oakland when they move to Vegas and just – because Vegas would already love a baseball team, as we all know, it seems. Then if they got Ohtani, that would just be instant diehard fans right there for everything.
One that I also think would demographically make sense, actually maybe a couple, would be San Francisco or San Diego.
Yeah.
I mean, San Diego, they already have a gajillion dollars linked to – two players, four player, whatever it is. But like San Francisco, I think demographically makes sense from like the media market perspective of like, just
it's very much a Asian centric kind of.
Yeah. I'm missing the word for it, but yeah. So like I think demographically and also like they're not a bad team. They're 7 games above 500, 4 back in the division, and so like they're still a team that could contend. And I think they have, if I can remember, I think they have a decent farm system.
I think they have a couple.
Farm systems are always hazy to me because they always change like mid-year. But I think they have a pretty good farm system.
Yeah. While we're on the Angels, I do want to get your opinion on this. Like, if they do end up trading Ohtani, which I don't think either of us think they will this year, do they trade Mike Trout as well?
Well, I mean, he's currently hurt, so probably not.
Yeah, well, I guess that's true. But
Yeah, I don't think they. I
where
mean, if
they
he was healthy, maybe, but I doubt it, especially with the contract.
yeah, I guess the contract's a big issue, but I mean, I feel like if they went all in, not even gone all in. They just have two of the best players in recent times, and kind of seems like they've struggled significantly. I think their last playoff berth was 2014, so 9 years ago. Hasn't been good with the two best players in baseball. Might be time to just get a prospect overhaul if they can, and we'll see.
See, if I'm the Angels, even though it's a little bit, I'm in a little bit of a tricky situation because it's like they're 4 games back, I think, at the third wild card spot. And so they're on the fringe of like contending or not. I would be going all in.
Yeah.
And I'm saying I'd be going all in because it's like, at least this is the closest they've been in years. It feels like to contending for a playoff spot with Mike Trout and with Shohei Ohtani. Like, you can sell that to you. I think you could sell that to your fan base, and it's like if it doesn't work out, then you could at least tell them that you tried. But if you're just willing, they're 2 games above 500. I don't think they're winning the division, but they're still somewhat on the fringe of contention of being a wild card team. And so it's like if you could, I don't know, improve your pitching staff, improve that lineup a little bit with Mike Trout's injury, then you can at least look your fan base in the eye, because it's like they're already. I don't want to say they're an irrelevant organization, but like people have made fun of them for years because they have one of the best players in recent memory on their team, and they haven't sniffed contention, and like at least contention for a wild card spot. And it's now you get maybe some who call the greatest player ever with Mike Trout, and they're still not in contention really at all, but like this is the closest they've been.
Yeah.
And so like if I'm the general manager, even though it probably would be smarter to sell and get a good prospect haul so you can still build around Mike Trout, I'd be going all in. If depending on the deal and the players at hand.
Yeah,
but
absolutely. I mean, it's like
I would at least go for it.
First time it's kind of been even close. Might as well just try and see it. And like you said, at the end of the day, the fans will appreciate you at least trying, even if it ends up failing. Then you'll lose players anyway. But it's going to be weird to see. I do want to talk on 2 teams that might be sellers. It might be time. You mentioned the Padres, but the Padres and Mets. Do you think they're going to be selling at the deadline? Because those 2 teams have so much money wrapped up in a few players, and it's just it's like 2 of the 3 highest payrolls in baseball, and they're both far out of the playoff race.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pulling up the standings right now just to refresh. So yeah, the Padres are 6 out of the wild card spot, the 3rd wild card spot. Well, there's a couple teams tied for it, and then the Mets are 7th. I mean, I think it would make sense to sell at least off a couple of players.
Mm-hmm.
There is the weird thing with Blake Snell about like he'd be one that I'd consider selling if I'm San Diego, because his value's never been higher, at least in a Padre uniform, because of how well he's pitched this year, at least in the last couple of months. The thing with him though is there's the personal catcher relationship that he has with Gary Sanchez versus everyone else. And so if you're a team wanting to trade for him, would you want to trade for both him and Sanchez? It's like, is that like a package deal that you want to come about? And it's also the thing where it's like, even if Sanchez, depending on the team that he would get traded to hypothetically in this scenario, would you want like a pitcher who can only operate with one catcher come like the postseason? I don't know if the team would be willing to do that.
Yeah, it would be.
Even if he is like a downgrade at the catcher spot. I mean, Gary, obviously being a Yankee fan, I have seen Gary. I did enjoy Gary, but I know a lot of fans, at least
there was a lot
like towards the end of his career, because of he's a defensive liability.
Yep.
At least in terms of like the framing and blocking pitches, as well as his bat kind of tailed off after 2017. And so there's always that comes with Gary. And he's been better, I think, since joining San Diego. But there's still like that personal catcher relationship that he and Blake Snell have. I don't know what that would be for trade negotiations.
That's a big deal in baseball, having a pitcher that trusts his catcher, and can change a lot of things.
Yeah, and it's like I just don't know if like a team. I mean, it's probably not a gigantic haul for Blake Snell, but like it's still worth consideration if you're a team considering that trading for him. Like another one would be like, or would they be willing to trade Juan Soto because he is, I think, in the last year of his deal, or like he has 1 year left.
One more, but it's like it feels like the time where a team who's trying to make that run in the playoffs, they go out and trade for a guy like Soto, and it'd benefit the Padres getting rid of him solely because they traded away so many prospects and everything last year to get him that maybe they get at least some of that back, something that can help them go in the future because it's been bad. They've been really, really underwhelming, and this is just the Padres mentality. They do this every like 3 or 4 years. They'll go sign a whole load of players and be like, oh, we're going to compete with the Dodgers this year, and then just be terrible. On the one, I'd also say I wouldn't be surprised if Josh Hader moves.
That was another one that I was going to mention. Yeah,
a lot as well. That don't know where, but every team could use a good closer. So
yeah, especially with how volatile that position can be. And I mean, we've also seen it with Josh, how volatile he can be from like a month to month. I mean, he's still one of the best closers in baseball, but closers can be weird when it comes to like their consistency because it's like they can have a stretch of bad outings. And we've seen Hader have a stretch of not just bad outings, but terrible outings. But for the most part, he's been really good this year. So there's always room for bullpen help, especially in today's baseball. But going back to your Mets thing,
yeah, I was going to say.
I think there is a world where they do sell either one of Max or Verlander, but like I know they're like Verlander's still been solid, maybe not to his standard, but he's still been like a solid pitcher relative to the rest of the starters across baseball.
Yeah,
and I mean, Max has been plagued by the home run ball. This isn't like anything new with him, but it feels like the velocity and he's getting hit harder than he has for most of his career, I would say. At least that's what it just feels like. And so if you're a team willing to trade for that, you're probably not going to get the best prospect haul if you're the Mets, but you are getting like luxury tax relief. Because I think the final luxury tax bracket's at like $290 million or something along those lines. And so like you're still I don't know what, I don't exactly, I know the Mets are above 300 million, but I don't know where they're at exactly. I can pull that up. But you're still getting some luxury tax relief. And it's like, if they also, I don't think they're going to trade Pete. I don't think they would trade Alonso. No. Or I just said, I don't think they're going to trade Lindor.
Yeah.
But like, there's still a world where they could trade either one of Max or Verlander for something.
Looking at their contracts, they're owed $43 million each next year.
Right.
Verlander's 40 right now. Scherzer's 38. I would say their best days are probably behind them. So I mean, even just getting anything for them, and getting, like you say, getting rid of that contract off the bill, could help the Mets out significantly. But the point I was going to make was the Mets it feels like they're in a much worse position when it comes to selling than the Padres, just because Padres have some younger guys who have a little bit more time. And like, that's my concern of Scherzer and Verlander is, I'm sure there's a team out there that they'll want just a guy who can come in and has pitched in the playoffs before. So for those contending teams that they might want to just go out and trade for a guy like this, and might not be as high an asking price as we will see with other pitchers, but just all stuff to consider. And like the contracts owed $18 million this year still, I want to say, for each. But
I'm looking at it right now. So it looks like the Mets, at least this is per Fangraphs, they're on the books this year for just about $363 million.
Okay.
On their roster. And it's like, looking at it, I mean, a couple guys that I did forget to mention, David Robertson could be a guy that they sell. He's making $10 million this year. Tommy Pham, who's making $6 million this year, could be an outfield that they'll sell. Again, you're probably not going to get a big prospect haul for these guys just because of their contract situation, but you're probably going to get something for them. Like Mark Canha might be a name that you would maybe want to part with. Maybe, I mean, Starling Marte has $42 million left after the season, so I don't know if they're going to get necessarily a suitor for him, but he's someone worth considering, I guess. I don't know if I don't know if a team like the Dodgers is willing to take Carlos Carrasco as just an extra arm. They can maybe fix him like they have plenty of other pitchers in the past. Because I know he's not having the best season. I mean, there's maybe like Adam Ottavino. Again, just looking at it like just guys. I mean, these aren't guys you're selling high on. That's the problem. But like these are guys at least you're getting something out of them when you're 7 games back of the third wild card spot. And so it's something worth considering. It's something worth considering if you're the Mets. I don't know if Cohen or Billy Epler would consider doing that, along with the Max and Verlander situation. They may just make 1 or 2 moves. They may do that thing where, I mean, organizations do this all the time in multiple sports, but like they might sell off a couple of pieces, but they might try to add maybe one or two players from other teams in return, like guys who can help them out right now, to kind of you're kind of leveling yourself off with that. So maybe they try to do that, but if I were them, I'd probably start selling pieces.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, I do want to talk on some teams that we think will be buying in a second, but one more team that I think could sell this trade deadline in the next week is the White Sox. They're a big team that I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, third worst in the AL. They have some solid players. I mean, Lance Lynn's been playing pretty decent. Lucas Giolito, and batting wise, I mean, Tim Anderson, I don't know if he's had a great season this year, but he still could add
worst
to
of his career by far.
Yeah, I was going to say, but then, I mean, who else do they have? Eloy Jimenez they could trade. They just feel like a team that has a bunch of guys that they could benefit other teams, that just nothing's clicking in Chicago for them.
Yeah, I remember. I think I mentioned them to you not last week. The last time you and I did this was just like a couple weeks ago. But yeah, they're definitely a team that I'm keeping an eye on. One other team that I don't know if we mentioned was the Cardinals.
Yeah,
and it's like they have Nolan Arenado, they have Paul Goldschmidt. Obviously, I don't know if they're going to trade either one of them, but like they still have other pieces. Like if you want to trade a Jordan Montgomery to a team, if you want to trade Jordan Hicks.
Yeah, I was gonna say like Tommy Edmonds, Paul DeYoung are the 2 names I've seen.
Yeah,
for us.
I mean, there's a log jam in the outfield. Like, are you going to trade like Dylan Carlson? Are you going to trade? There's a couple names that I'm forgetting. In that outfield,
Wilson Contreras is apparently could be moved, but
Tyler O'Neill.
Yeah, that's right.
Like they could. There's an area like, are they going to trade Lars Nootbaar? Like, who? They could be a team that could be trading off multiple years. I mean, I know some of these guys have more years of control left on their contract, but it's still something worth considering. I mean, the Cardinals, again, if I ever meet Jackson in person, I probably owe him like several alcoholic beverages for jinxing them this year. But they're a team that they've significantly underperformed all season. I mean, I know they came back and won last night against Arizona, but like they're still a ways back, not even just in the NL Central, but just for the wild card spot.
Yeah.
So it's they're a team and their GM's already come out and said that they're going to be looking to sell pieces, and nothing's really changed since then in terms of like where they're at in the standings. I mean, they're 9 back right now of the third wild card spot. And so this is a team that's probably going to be looking to sell off. And it's like, again, I don't know if they're going to be trading either one of Goldschmidt or Arenado, even though you could probably get a good haul for either one of them, even though Arenado's on this big, massive contract with a no trade clause that he could potentially waive if he wants to. But like who knows? Who knows? Like you could still get something back and kind of set yourself up for 2024, because it's like this team was pretty far away the best team in the NL Central last year, right? Yeah. Like this team was really good, and so it's like, yeah, they've significantly underperformed, and it kind of fell apart from the jump when after that Tyler O'Neill, Olivier Marmol debacle, like 5 games into the season. But like this is a team that could be looking to sell. I mean, this goes along with like teams that we know who are going to sell, like the Pirates and the Nats and the Rockies, Rockies
won't sell because the Rockies have no one worth selling.
Most of these teams don't have many players worth selling. Like they're still going to try to maybe sell like a couple, like a bullpen arm or something. I don't know.
That's a good point.
But like, I get what you're saying. They probably don't have many pieces to sell, but that's what a lot of these teams run into.
It's just
at this time of year, or at
That's a
least
good
a lot of these really, really bad teams. No offense to the Rockies, but they're not.
Oh no, the Rockies are absolute dumpster fire. I have no hopes, no expectations, and they still find a way to break my heart every year. And it shouldn't even be happening. But oh well. I do want to talk because we're kind of like 5 minutes left in this. Some teams that are going to be buyers. I want to just start with I think Tampa Bay Rays because they started the season 30-9. They've gone 30-31 since and have now lost the division lead to the Orioles. I feel like they still have a ton of talented players. They have some prospects in there that they could trade away to get in some bigger guys. I think that's probably one of the teams I'm looking to see make quite a few moves in the next week.
They've been bit by injuries, especially in their rotation, but like their pitching staff has just been hammered with injuries throughout the season. So I'm guessing they're probably going to add maybe an arm or two.
Could that be somewhere we see Blake Snell go back to? Because I think wasn't he
possibly.
a Rays?
Possibly. I don't know if you'd want to go back after what happened in the World Series, but perhaps that's definitely an option. I mean, they could be, who are some other starters? I mean, they could be in, we just talked about Jordan Montgomery. They can maybe be a team for like Dylan Cease if they want to, like
someone like Marcus Stroman, maybe from the Cubs.
Yeah. Like there could be linked to many arms, but I think they will get some bullpen help as well, at least at the back end of that, because there's like questions there, and they've been worse than you would expect a Rays bullpen to be. They're still a solid bullpen, but
the guy we were talking about earlier, why not Josh Hader?
Fine, good option.
Yeah, but
you definitely need someone to solidify at least the back end of that, because I mean, like Jason Adams held down the fort a little bit. I know Fairbanks was injured for a little while, but I mean there still are like plenty of questions, and it's like they have. I don't want to say they've gone closer by committee like throughout their history, but like if you could get a closer like Josh Hader, that would help solve at least some problems.
Because it'd save some arms at times, especially coming into playoff time where you're playing so many games in such a short period of time and all high level must-win games, and having a solid closer, it could be the difference. But we'll see. What other teams are you thinking are going to be big buyers? Because I know I have a couple in mind, but I want to hear your thoughts.
I mean, the Diamondbacks, they want to talk about a team that needs bullpen help. They need bullpen help badly.
Yeah.
And so they're a team that's going to buy. I don't know how much the Braves are going to buy necessarily, but they're a team that could use like an extra outfielder maybe. Yeah. Just an extra bat off the bench. I'm guessing both the Brewers and the Reds are gonna buy. If the Reds can get their team that's in need, like they need help in the rotation. And so
could we see the Phillies being a team that buys? Because right now they're half a game out of that last wild card spot. Obviously, the NL wild card has 3 teams. There's really one game is separating 5 teams, so it's very, very close race there. So I'm wondering if, obviously, we saw the Phillies make the World Series last year, kind of surprisingly so, and maybe they're trying to buy some stuff, but I haven't heard many rumors about them looking to make a ton of moves.
I think they will buy. And Dave Dombrowski is definitely a GM that will empty his farm system to buy. Okay. And so I think I don't know how, it's probably pretty empty already with just some of the moves they made over the last couple of seasons, but they're a team that's going to buy.
All right. There's one more team I do want to get your thoughts on, considering there's a banner behind you. Are the Yankees going to buy? Yankees going to sell? Because
I think they'll buy.
2.5 out of the wild card spot.
Donis and I talked about this at length, practically the entire episode this last week, or last week. But we talked about like if they were to sell, because they were in a position where I think they were like 4 out of the wild card spot. I mean, I know they swept the Royals this weekend, kind of made up very little ground, but some at least. But if they were to sell, like who would they sell? And it's like the couple of guys that we like kind of pinned were like Gleyber Torres, and I don't know, I'm trying to think of like some of the other names that we discussed. I mean, they wouldn't be selling high on Severino. We know they're not going to trade Garrett Cole, but there wasn't very many pieces to sell. Like you're selling high on that you're getting like a decent prospect on. It's like if they buy, I don't know who's fixing the mess that they have, because it's like the offense just hasn't been good at all this season. I mean, it was a little better over this recent 3-game homestand against the Royals, but I don't know if they're a weird team that I think they could sell off a couple pieces, but they also could buy. I think they're gonna add around the fringes. Like, I don't think it's gonna be any massive big move, but like Brian Cashman is a GM that will pull a rabbit out of a hat for in some years, and he has done that before, where he's made moves where that like no one's really expected. Not necessarily big moves, but just moves in general, like trading Jordan Montgomery for Harrison Bader last year. Just like, wait, what? Trading for Edwin Encarnacion in 2017 or 2019, excuse me. Trading for Todd Frazier, Tommy Kahnle, David Robertson from the White Sox after they nearly got traded to Boston in 2017. Like, there's been moves that have been made before that have been kind of shocking moves that you don't really expect them to make. And so it's like they're probably going to add to their bullpen, probably get at least one or two arms to kind of help round things out, just some extra bodies that they need, because their bullpen has been taxed a lot this season. And so just getting maybe 1, 2, maybe 3 fresh arms in there would definitely help. They're probably going to they have to get another left fielder, because it's like the left fielding situation has been bad for a year and a half outside of the 1 month they had a healthy Andrew Benintendi. Yeah. And they let him walk in free agency for a good amount of money that he got signed for the White Sox. So they need help. And it's not even just there. They need help in plenty of places, but I think they're just going to add around the fringes and maybe talk themselves into being a wild card team, because it's like they're not going to win the division. They're 9 games out. Like, that ship is kind of sailed, and especially with the White Sox, or not White Sox, especially with the Rays and the Orioles probably adding at the deadline. Yeah. They're probably going to be the 2 teams that win the division. It's really up to Toronto. If they're going to make a push, they're a team that could be a sneaky like buyer that could at least make a run for the division. I don't think they are. They're 6.5 out right now, but they're a team that's going to add. I don't know what Boston's been weird lately, because it's like they've been hot and cold, but they're currently in like a hot stretch right now. And so, I mean, I think they had a stretch where they won like 9 of like 11 or something like that. It was something like crazy, including pre-All-Star break, but they're a team that's 6 games above 500. They're tied with New York, actually, for 4th place in the division. And I don't know if they're going to be a team that's going to be buying. I mean, they certainly need to add to their pitching staff, especially the rotation, just fortify it, make it a little bit better. I don't know what Heim has up his sleeve, if he has anything up his sleeve, but I think they're a team that's going to definitely add to that pitching staff and maybe add a batter or 2. I'm not sure. But that offense has been really good anyway, so I don't know if they need to. But, like,
that whole AL East is going to be extremely.
It's weird, man. It's weird. And so it's like, I think New York will be in a position to buy, but I don't that they might sell off a couple pieces to at least get under that final luxury tax bracket, which they're, I think, $1.5 million over right now. Yeah. And so, like, I think they're going to sell off a couple pieces, maybe not big names, maybe just some tax relief, and then maybe add around the fringes for cost controlled guys. If I were a betting man. But.
Yeah. So there you have it. There's our MLB trade deadline week out preview. I did want to say, because we have gone over this hour mark, but some news that just kind of broke while we were doing this show is Jim Harbaugh looking likely that he's going to face a 4-game suspension. I really don't know how much this is going to affect Michigan, considering the 4 games he's missing are Eastern Carolina, UNLV, Bowling Green, and Rutgers, all at home. Michigan should win those, but we've seen Appalachian State a couple times before, so we've seen them lose those games that they should win. I don't really, like I said, I don't think this affects them all too much, at least early on. It's going to be interesting to see if they do end up suspending him more, what the whole deal is, because it's about a recruiting investigation. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think this is pretty inconsequential to their season.
Yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day, only 1 game really matters in the Big Ten. It seems, at least for the past few seasons, and it's that the big game at the end of the season, Ohio State, Michigan, it's pretty much decided who wins the conference the last few years. So,
I mean, I wouldn't sleep on Penn State, but yeah,
no, not at all.
I still think that Michigan and Ohio State are a tier above them. I actually think Michigan might win the Big Ten East this year. But
Okay. I like that take. We'll have to do some more college football talk at some point, but we are at an hour and 5. Thank you guys, the viewers, for watching. Matt, pleasure as always. Make sure you guys who are watching subscribe to our YouTube channel or Twitch channel, whichever you're watching on. Stay tuned for another episode of the Vendetta Sports Media Daily Show tomorrow. And yeah, have a good rest of your day. See you later.